You state HR. All right. My name is Matthew Meacham. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Helen Summers building here in Olympia, and to those of you that are online, maybe across the world. Don't know where everybody is hailing from today across the state, but I think we've got over 50 folks or more online that are joining us and participating. I do want to run through a couple of things here real quickly before we get started, some housekeeping things before I turn it over to Jim Crawford to start this event. So first of all, for people in the room, restrooms are located directly out the doors behind you and right in front of the elevators. Beverages, cold filtered water is available from the water fountain if you have a refillable container. That fountain is located in front of the elevators. There's also a dispensing machine with beverages out those doors, and if you make an immediate left. In case of emergency, if the fire alarm is activated or a message is received ordering an evacuation of this building, please try to follow One Washington staff members out of the building. Can we raise our hands real quick? Awesome. We will not lead you wrong. Follow them to the designated gathering area. The nearest designated gathering area is the north parking lot of the old GA building. When departing, if possible, take all your belongings with you, but do not delay evacuation to retrieve these things. When evacuating, always watch for hazards and take the safest route out of the building. You can leave this conference room through the doors at the back of the room and keep heading into the back right corner where the exterior doors are located. Out those doors, hang a left, and you'll see the old GA building and the parking lot. When you leave the building, watch for traffic on the street, please. It would be really tragic if we got out there and then got hit by a car. And One Washington staff hosting this event will use the sign-in sheet to report accountability to the evacuation Red Hat staff. If you have not yet signed in, please do that as soon as possible. That is right outside. Your safety is important to us, so please follow us to the designated area in the case of emergency. Okay. Now I want to do a quick demonstration of the room microphone. You see, everyone here in the room sees how I'm holding this. There is a little button on here that when you push it, it goes green. That means that it's live. When you push it again, it goes red and it turns off. We will be using this for when we do Q&A here at the end of this session. So if you have a question, we call on you, please wait. We have some folks, some assistants around the room that will bring the microphone to you. And again, the purpose of this is, I'm sure we all have big, loud voices that we're using in this room. We do have the folks online, and this will enable them to be able to hear the full conversation. Okay, finally, please take a moment to silence your portable devices and phones. Would appreciate that. And with that, I will hand it over here to Jim Crawford, the Assistant Director for OFM Budget.
Thank you, Matthew. Well, it does work. Good training. They don't let me use the mic that you just got trained on, so that tells you where we are here. I am Jim Crawford. I'm the Assistant Director for Budget at OFM. I want to welcome all of you. And there was a former fiscal chair in the House who used to talk about the thousands of TVW viewers out there in committee. So there, for the hundreds of you that are out there in the audience participating remotely, thank you for your time. I also want to thank One Washington for putting the orientation together today. I mean, those of you who've been around a while know that we've been at the concept of One Washington for a while, frankly, resetting a bit. The names behind me are strong leaders. They're new to One Washington. They're going to take us in places that we knew that we needed to go and that we're confident in. I've worked with these individuals in different capacities in different ways over the years, and these guys are the real deal. So we're kind of poised to make some serious progress here on a really important issue. Together, you all make up the combined HR, payroll, and budget functions of the state. You're very aware, you're probably more aware than I, of the lack of integration in those and the complexities of working in these old systems that we have. They're inadequate in terms of the services that they provide you. They're inadequate in terms of the services they're able to enable us and our agencies to be providing to the public. And we've got a steep but fundamentally important road ahead to get ourselves turned into the sort of modern world and into an area where we can really improve services. So I'm excited about that. We got into it, and I'll tell you, so OFM sort of sponsor, owner of a lot of these, or some of these. We're also a customer of all of these systems, so sort of from both standpoints, I share some of the frustrations you have with the way the world is, and the difficulty in making a change of this magnitude. So again, I want to thank you for being here. I really want to encourage you to stay heavily involved in this throughout, early and often. You are the voices that are going to need to be loud out in agencies in terms of moving this forward. This is going to take resources, it's going to take time, it's going to take human energy. You're going to need, I will go out, others of us will go out, and we will be pushing agency leadership to be paying attention, to be engaging, to be making the investments that are necessary to make this project ultimately successful. But I would encourage you to do that. You're going to have to do that from within your organizations. You're the credible voices out there that say, hey, we need to do this, this is coming, we got to get prepared for it. I'll just share with you a very brief anecdote. So I'm the Assistant Director for Budget at OFM, and at one point the One Washington folks came to us and said, you need to figure out as a user of this how you're going to get prepared for the transition, for all the work that's going ahead when we get to ultimately procuring a budget system, which under the prior schedule was scheduled to sort of go last. And we'd kind of been, frankly, lagging in terms of our attentiveness to that because it was out there quite a ways. And that's one of the dangers in a process and in a system like this, is that it sits out there a ways. I'd encourage you to get engaged early and stay that way, because what we learned when we got to that point in the process is that we didn't know enough to ask the right questions around what was going to be required of us and what we were going to need to do. And by the time we did that, there were some real aha moments. We were pretty far into a process that we realized we weren't ready for, and if we weren't ready, there were probably a whole lot of other people that weren't ready. So we went out and we started to hear that from agencies. We're not quite ready, so we're going to back up and we're going to get you all ready, but you need to help us along the way. So again, thanks for being here. From my perspective, there are really only kind of three short-term pieces of this puzzle that I want to share with you, and then turn this over to the folks who really are going to lead us to the success. We've got a budget package in front of the legislature. Frankly, we're in competition for resources with all of you. It is clear that no progress here is not an option, and it is clear that we've got to build confidence and bring the state along in the investment of this magnitude over time, and that's exactly the plan that we have in front of them. That is being pretty well received. We have yet to see legislative budgets, but we're out there pursuing the resources that are going to be necessary to pull this to fruition. A big part of that is organizational change management. It is just going to be critical. We are learning that. We hope that you are learning that. Some of you are, frankly, ahead of us in that, and we're learning from you. So the big changes are coming there, and we need the resources as a state to do that. Along with that, the planning to direct the business transformation that's going to be coming to align to these new systems. A lot of that work is ongoing. We're going to need some resources in the next biennium to continue that. Fundamentally, we've got to write the procurement for new and integrated systems for all of this in the next biennium. So that's a key component of the resource that we're requesting of the legislature moving forward. And the third and final component of that, from my perspective, is that we've got to do a better job of engaging you and helping you identify your needs, what changes you're going to be implementing, how that's going to work. We're all the same and we're all different, and the sweet spot is to try and find that area where we're responsive to everybody's individual needs, while we don't make this so customized at every turn that it collapses from the sheer complexity of the entire endeavor. So that's a balancing point that we'll just have to continue to work on, but I'm real confident now in the leadership that these guys are going to be able to bring that off. Thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to larger and larger crowds as we go and engaging you in helping roll this out in the future. Thank you.
How about now? All right. Can folks online hear me okay? Okay, great. All right, thank you very much, Jim, for those words and for introducing everybody to a little bit of the big picture about what's going on out there. Just a show of hands in the room, how many folks have already seen a One Washington presentation? Okay. How many folks have seen one in the last, let's say, the last 45 days? Okay, a little bit smaller, okay. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Matthew Meacham. I'm the program director here with One Washington. I have been in this role for about a month and a half, about 6 weeks or so. Really enjoying my time getting to meet some of you folks out there in the agencies. As a refugee from agency land, who was tasked with being responsible for one of the systems that will be replaced with this, I am really stoked. You'll hear me use that term a lot. Really excited about what One Washington can do for us and what it will mean for the future, both with how we use our staff today and then what we will be able to do in terms of new functionality and being able to do a much better job of providing service to the citizens of Washington in the future. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to go through here just at a high level about what it is that we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be going through a glossary and so what some of these terms might mean. Some of you might be familiar with things like SaaS or ERP. Some of us might not be, so we're going to go through the glossary. Also, we're going to go through a little bit about what are the different core systems that are going to be impacted by this effort, and also going to be talking about why are we doing this? What are the benefits to modernizing and doing things in a different way? What is it about what we do now, why we might want to think about changing things up in the future, and what's kind of pushing this? What's the business case for this? Also going to be sharing with you a little bit about our One Washington program governance structure. There have been some changes since last fall, and we've put in place a structure that we think is going to be highly beneficial for the state and also lead to things being much better for you folks out there in the agencies with how you have to get things resolved. And then talk a little bit about our reset that we have done as of November of last year, November of 2018, what kind of led into that decision, what it means for the schedule, what the next 2 years and beyond are going to look like, and then also what that means for kind of the money side of things here and the budget, and what is it that we're requesting now from the legislature, and then what do we think this is going to cost the state overall heading into the next decade. This is not the kind of thing where you can just do it within existing resources and just go down to, go to the cloud and buy a new piece of software and it just downloads on your phone and voila, you're good to go. We'll also talk a little bit about our staffing here in the One Washington program, and then also a little bit about communications piece, which I can do at the end of this presentation. Okay, so a little bit about One Washington and what this program is all about. So you'll hear us talk a lot about business transformation. This is more than an IT replacement project. Yes, we are going to be doing that. We are going to be taking systems that we have used for, in some cases, many decades and doing away with those and bringing in modern tools. But primarily, this is about how does the state of Washington conduct its business across 4 main functional areas, including finance, procurement, budget, and then we've kind of combined human resources and payroll, which you all are all very familiar with. And the purpose here is that there are a number of things going on with the systems that we have today, including things that have been around for quite some time that are just no longer meeting the need, some systems that are getting to kind of their end of life, and it's becoming very inefficient to both upkeep those, and then we're losing some of the expertise that's needed to maintain those systems. And then I would argue that one of the biggest challenges that we have today from a management standpoint is that these systems are not talking to each other in a cohesive manner. There is no holistic look at the state's financials. There's no talking, I shouldn't say no talking, but there's no interface between HRMS and AFRS as an example, unless an agency or groups of agencies have come together and built a workaround. And for my previous life, I know what that looks like and how much time and effort goes into that, and where those resources might be better off doing things to actually do some of the analysis around what is within HRMS, what is within AFRS, and how might we be using our resources in a different way. So that's part of why we talk about it being a business transformation program. This is about looking at how we conduct business in these 4 areas and finding a new way of doing things. This is obviously sponsored by the Office of Financial Management. The reasons for that are, there's several reasons for that. Jim touched on this earlier. One is that state HR is the business owner for the human resources piece, statewide accounting on the finance piece, and then the budget piece obviously is within Jim's shop for how the state pulls together in concert with you folks at the agency level the biennial budgets and then the supplemental budget requests. Going back in time a little bit, we've been on this journey, Jim mentioned it before, since the 13-15 biennium. Some people might be like, okay, show us the money, what are you doing with all this time? And we are rapidly approaching the point where we've got to be able to prove that and to show to people, well, what have we been doing? We're going to be talking a little bit more about that in the coming months. And the team, I will say, combined with work with agencies, we are putting down payments in the bank now with making sure that we're going to get the right vendor in here to help us get an actual system that's going to meet our needs in the future. So you see up here on the graphic, underlining all of this, all four of these business areas, is the concept of organizational change management. We cannot be successful by just saying, again, looking at these as IT systems that we're going to take offline and put in something else in place. A whole host of things are going to change with this. How we conduct payroll, all the other systems that are in place, and by systems I don't just mean IT stuff, all the spreadsheets that we use to track things, to measure what's in one system versus what's in another system. I was just speaking with somebody from DOC earlier today about all the different workarounds that have to happen out there in order to be able to marry up what's coming out of a procurement shop in order to be able to provide straight-faced answers about what's happening with the business. Okay. Some terms here, we're going to go over this relatively quickly because I think most of us are probably familiar with these. When we talk about enterprise resource planning, or ERP, that is business management software. It combines the data in a number of different functional areas across an organization to be able to measure the people, the money, the information, and the assets that we all use in order to conduct our business. Software as a service. I think most people are familiar with that these days because that's where most software is going. But the idea in this context is that this is a subscription to a cloud-based application service. We fully expect that in the future we will be going to the cloud in order to get a lot of our information around fiscal and procurement information. The advantage to that is that we will be able to get it anywhere with obviously the right securities protocols in place, but be able to get that information anywhere that you've got an internet connection. Highly configurable. This is a very important concept. In the past, and again, Jim touched on this, we have a tendency here in state government to want to customize. That just ends up driving up the costs of software tools, and then it makes them very brittle when we want to go and change something in the future. So the idea here is that we're looking for something, a tool that will have standard functionality while also being flexible and adaptable to the various business needs. Do we need 150 separate ways to do a particular function or 100 different ways to do payroll? Probably not. Is there only going to be one way to do every single business process? No. We do need to be flexible because there are specific needs for specific agencies, but we also need to be very cognizant of the value that comes with standardization and kind of a centralized approach. Also, a word on customization. I've already kind of touched on why that's been our traditional practice in the past, but again, it's just too cost prohibitive moving into the future. The risks of not being able to meet our future business needs are just too high, and that's just not where we need to be going, and it's not where the industry is going, I should add. Okay. So, a modern enterprise solution, an ERP. What is it that we expect a modern ERP SaaS solution to do for us? We envision it being something that encompasses all four of these business areas, the enterprise here being the entire state. I would add to this that it is not just state agencies. There are some other groups that will be utilizing these tools. Higher ed will be involved in some capacity with this. The resources here are the capital, assets, and people. And then the P for planning is in all of these different areas, and how do we plan, how does management plan for and take action on all of these different functions. We expect these to be integrated so that in the future, staff will be able to better manage these different functions. Software hosting, you will hear this talked about a lot about on-premise versus cloud. We are definitely heading down the cloud path for the reasons that I mentioned before. And so here's a little bit more about the different systems that are going to be impacted, some of which you might use or your peers might use in your agencies. I'm not going to read through all of this, but I do want to give you a sense of the scope of what we are dealing with here at One Washington. And the purpose of that is, again, to socialize with you that this is not going to be a quick fix where we are going to go home from work on a Friday afternoon and come back on Monday morning and ta-da, we've got brand new systems in place in all 4 of these business areas. There's a lot of work to be done to figure out how are all these systems talking to each other today, even if they're not talking to each other electronically, but maybe there's a person involved or there's a spreadsheet involved. We have to get clarity on that so that we can do the implementation of a potential solution the right way. So it's things like AFRS, CAMS, TEMS, HRMS, and obviously you see there on the right, there's a number of different challenges with those systems and why we think that now is the time to start going down this change path. AFRS alone is over 30 years old. It's a COBOL-based program. Anybody try to find a COBOL developer? Anybody? Yeah, kind of hard to do. I could go on and on about the challenges with HRMS. There's a number of challenges in there. And I think here, so what are some of the benefits of modernizing? Number one, we believe that there's going to be a statewide collection of data that we think is going to be very, very helpful. The information enters into the system ideally one time, regardless of where it goes, then it gets populated out through the rest of the system. Also, we believe that there's going to be a higher degree of transparency and then the integrity of the data. Anybody ever get frustrated when you get the wrong answer on something, when you pull the information out of a system and then you go to another system and find out, well, wait a minute, that information is not right. Cannot stand that. Drove me nuts all the time. So this is designed to get around some of that. And obviously, there's going to be work around making sure, and we call it data cleanup, making sure that the historical data that we do have today is accurate and then can be, whether it gets populated into the new system or it needs to be collected somewhere else because maybe it's a shadow system or something like that, that's going to be important for the future of the state. We also believe that with the new system, we're going to prevent critical system failure. We do run a risk if we let this keep going, where we might miss payroll and some other really important business functions if we do not go down this path of replacing these systems. This will also help supporting budget development and planning and management of all the different assets mentioned previously. And then also we believe that now is the opportunity to start to streamline some of our business processes. I mentioned payroll before. Why are we doing it 100 different ways? Let's start getting it down. I think we have a question.
Yeah, Matthew, we have an online question that is, at what point will an ERP platform be selected? What ERP platforms are being considered?
Yes, so that's a great question. So in terms of when a vendor would be selected, that's going to be out a couple of years. I've got a chart on here that addresses that around some of the timelines and when we believe that we will be moving to implementation. The actual selection of the vendor will happen at a point here in a little bit. I'll show it when we get to the slide. And then there's an entire process of working with them on the contract and agreeing to terms and all that. I'll go into that level of detail. And then the other question was, what are the types of systems that we might be looking at? I'll just use two names as an example that are commonly known names. One is PeopleSoft, another one is Workday. There's an institution of higher education that is using one of those vendors right now. They are in the process of doing exactly what we're doing right now. They are also in a highly federated environment and kind of going on this path as well. I will come to that and dive a little bit deeper on the first part of that question here in a minute. And I would just ask if folks do have questions, if we can hold them till the end, and then we will leave plenty of time at the end to address everybody's concerns or questions. Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about our new governance structure that we have here in place with this program. The purpose of this is to not just make sure that we're doing what we said we were going to do in the program and make sure that just like with any project, you've got strong sponsorship in place, but also to make sure that we've got a forum or forums in order to handle some of the really difficult business questions that we're going to have. An example might be that there is a business question about how we conduct something with payroll today, and each agency is doing it a little bit different. Maybe in the future, there needs to be a much more concerted effort and it needs to be standardized. Where does that get decided? What are the exemptions to that? What are the caveats to that? We fully expect to use the governance structure in order to handle some of those things. So let me talk a little bit about what goes into the governance structure. So there at the bottom of this kind of pyramid, if you will, are the stakeholders. That's all the different agencies. We want to get decisions made at the lowest level where possible. Up from that, we have several different advisory committees. Some folks in the room or online today may be a part of one of those advisory committees. Show of hands, anybody on an advisory committee in the room today? Yep, we got a couple of people, great. And so the purpose of those advisory committees, there's one for each of the business lines of finance, procurement, HR, payroll, and budget. Also, there is one for organizational change management. We are also, I don't mind sharing with you that we are thinking about the need for a couple of other ones, at least one more, to help us with some other things that we didn't foresee, where we're going to need some additional insight from our partners, you folks out there in agencies and places impacted by this change. The goal here is to be very flexible with rapid decision making and partnering with folks to both share information and to get decisions made. Up from that, we have the Business Transformation Board, which resolves enterprise-wide issues, an example being maybe how a specific payroll process is handled. And then above that, we have the Executive Steering Committee. That is where we've got some agency directors. We have a representative representing all small state agencies that's out there. And the purpose of that group is to resolve interagency issues. We know that some of those types of things are going to come up, and we want to have a good, strong forum in place to deal with those kinds of things. This is kind of new for the state, or at least in my experience, it's new, where we're going to have to collectively, as an enterprise, make some tough decisions in some of these areas for how will things get done in the future. I'm looking forward to that challenge. I think that's great for us and our ability to come together as a state to get some things resolved that have been maybe left out there. And so the proof in whether we're doing a good job or not is whether we can navigate that and get some of those things done. That's a little bit about our governance structure. Now I'd like to talk a little bit more about the reset that we did back in November. Some folks may already be familiar with some of these slides just because we've done this in some different forums, so bear with me. Okay, so we did this program reset in November. You probably heard us do that in the past in One Washington, and you're like, come on, when are you guys going to start actually like doing something? I will say that I see how busy the team is in terms of putting some of the foundation in place in order to go out and do our procurement, and also some of the work that's being done with advisory committees and some of the agency partners on starting to prep for what will this look like when we start to do this change. So some of the driving factors that went into this decision: the Executive Steering Committee made a decision to pursue SaaS Plus, if you recall, software as a service. SaaS Plus is all those things over there on the right in the diagram. So we know that there's the core functionality there in the middle, ERP in blue, for finance, procurement, HR, payroll, and budget. And then there's going to be some additional pieces, which we're calling Plus, that we fully expect to be available when we get to implementation stage, middle of next decade, with where the industry is headed. So some of those things might be things like an automated chatbot, if you will, for handling customer questions about an issue with the system that draws on a curated database of answers that are updated as different system iterations are created and as the software is updated, and then the curated database is created. So you're never dealing with outdated information. It might be things like a treasury management tool, and then other things. I already mentioned some of the machine learning or artificial intelligence things around, as an example, the chatbot piece. Also, another reason that went into the reset, the previous timeline, and I'll show this in a second, was calling for us to go do the procurement much sooner in the process, and we heard loud and clear from our agency partners, we are not ready for that. We just are not ready for this, and so we're taking some time now over the next while to get ready and to help you folks to be ready for when a vendor would be ready. Also, there's some budget constraint concerns out there. Anytime that we're getting that close to go and do a procurement, then we're looking at putting a large amount of dollars out there onto the table in terms of reaching a contract agreement with the vendor, and we're just not there yet. So, a couple of core elements. We wanted to conclude the SaaS Plus procurement, which we're planning on doing here in the next year-ish. Agency readiness is key. We're working on that now with you folks. Program readiness, we have to get ready here in Washington. There's 14 of us right now. We know that we're going to need more people than that. We know that we're going to need to partner with you folks and make sure that you guys have all the resources that you need to be ready. And then also we've got a lot of organizational change management. I'll talk about that a little bit here. I'm not going to go through each one of these bullet points. I've gotten that feedback before. You can certainly take a look at this offline, and this slide is kind of what I keep in front of me at work with what are our priorities, are we working on the right stuff. So in terms of concluding the SaaS Plus procurement, we have expanded the scope now to include budget and HR payroll capabilities. Previously, our thinking was that we were going to do an iterative process. We are no longer going to do that. We're going to do everything together. There's a number of reasons why that makes sense, to include the fact that anytime you start doing one piece before you do others, you're going to have a whole lot of interface work to go do that then you'd have to redo, redo, and redo. We're going to be working with finding an ERP procurement vendor to come and help us write the ERP. And we're also going to be acquiring an ERP expert. In terms of the in-depth technology readiness activities, we have an updated integration plan and then are working with agencies on identifying the inventory of system impacts, or impacted systems, I should say. And then in terms of getting our program ready, we're in the process of building out our project management office and then looking to get some additional technical expertise. And then the organizational change management support that we're planning on getting, that's not just for us. That's also to help you folks in the agencies be prepared for this change. There is an RFP out on the street right now. It closes on Monday. I think I have that right. Where we will be getting a vendor to come in and partner with Washington and then also with state agencies on prepping for identifying, prepping for the change, and specifically by looking at as-is processes, starting to get staff ready for this change and what all that's going to look like. Okay, on this slide here, I wanted to show you on the top what our previous schedule looked like. Show of hands, folks in the room, people familiar with that one before, you've seen it. Some people have seen it, some people maybe not. That shows there that this kind of wave approach, we were going to start with finance and procurement. You can see that on the top blue line. That was going to start middle of next fiscal year, so next January. And on the bottom, you have what the new restructured timeline is going to look like. So we knew we weren't going to be ready. We decided to push back the actual implementation of things to FY22. And so what you see in front of you there on the back half of FY19 and FY20 and then 21 is we're going to be finishing up our business requirements development, doing the program readiness, getting ourselves ready, agency readiness, partnering with you to make sure you guys are ready, all while also doing the ERP procurement, which will start middle of FY20 to answer the question from earlier from online. We expect that to fully wrap up at the end of FY21 so that we can begin implementation in FY22. Now, the last half of that procurement piece will probably be, we will at that point know who the apparently successful bidder is and be working in handling the contract negotiations with them. And then starting in FY22, we will begin the work of actual implementation. Again, that is not on first part of FY22, July 1 of FY22, we've got a brand new system in place and we're pulling down the old stuff. It's doing the planning and figuring out what that looks like in a smart way so that we're not leaving anybody hanging. Along with that, we're going to have a lot of work to do around data integration. And then one of the great pieces about this new ERP tool is that we're going to get some really solid business intelligence tools. These modern tools really will help us with identifying some of the challenges, some of the deltas that are out there between what are we doing with the resources, what are we getting out of it, and being a lot smarter so that we don't have to constantly create new reports for everything. And then later on in the decade, we're We're going to be going into maintenance and operation mode, standing up a support center, making sure that you folks are getting the support that you need out of that group in the future. Okay. I mentioned before that we have a request in front of the legislature right now. That the takeaway from this is that there are basically two amounts. One is to come to One Washington to get us ready. You see that on top. And then there's also money that will be available for an agency pool. That comes out of the budget requests that you folks or maybe some of your budget staff worked on last fall to pull together some requests for what that looks like. There will be more to come on that. With this here, I want to share with you a little bit about what our staffing structure will look like, provided that we're funded in July of this year. And what you see in front of you here in the room and online, the colored boxes are positions that are currently filled either with a state resource or with a contractor. And then the white boxes, even if you can't read all of the fine print on there, the white boxes are going to be vacancies that we're going to have available. And I share this with you for a couple of reasons. One is to show kind of our thinking about how we operate and how we expect to interface with you folks. And I'll go into that in a second. And then the other piece is that there's going to be lots of opportunities here to influence how One Washington works. And we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. So first of all, how we're structured. On the right here is our project management office. The purpose of that is that we know we're going to need people with project management skills, business analyst skills, and other skill sets in order to go out and partner with you folks to get the work actually done. There in the middle, we have our kind of our four functional business areas around budget, HR payroll, finance and procurement, and the leads for each one of those areas, and then some subject matter experts, which might be some of you folks in the room or folks that you know of that are not in the room and not online, but maybe work for another entity, maybe have some experience with the state, maybe work for a local government, maybe they work in the private sector and have been through something like this. We would really like to partner with you if you know of people that would be a good fit for coming to our organization. I will say that we are a highly dynamic group. We like to think of ourselves as kind of a little mini startup here in the state, where we have to be very entrepreneurial and comfortable with a lot of ambiguity and comfortable with change, taking a lot of courage, have a lot of courage to speak up and deal with some hard issues that maybe we haven't addressed in the state yet. So those are the kinds of folks that I think would be good fits for us. And so if that's anybody that you know of that you think would like to come and join us and work on something that's really going to have an impact on how the state does business for the next 15 or more years, there's going to be lots of opportunities coming up for that. Over there on the left, we have our technology office. We're going to be looking for a chief technology officer. And then to the far left, business management, that's kind of our own internal back of the house function, HR and contracts and budget to help us run the program. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I'm happy to talk with anybody within the room and online. And we're definitely going to be looking for people who really want to come and shake things up. So if that sounds like somebody that you know out there, would love to have a conversation. Okay, a little bit about communications. We have a new communications director, John, here in the back. Want to raise your hand? Everybody knows who John is, probably. John Wright, and he is in the process of working on updating our website. We've heard loud and clear from people that has not been updated in quite some time, and so we're in the process of kind of doing a phased approach to cleaning that up. You'll hear me talk about communications as kind of like marketing. I don't mean that in a negative way. I actually think that that's important to how we conceive and think about things. And I know that John's doing a great job with starting to pull together both the website that's out there so that people can get the right information, and then partnering with you folks in the room and others in the other business areas to make sure that you're getting your needs met. We are looking at expanding onto different social media platforms so that we're being consistent across all the different forums out there. And then it's really important to us that we are partnering with you. We want to make sure that folks are seen and heard, and we want to understand what your concerns are, and then we want to partner with you. I'll speak for myself, and I think also for Van. Our watchword is collaboration. We know that this is not the kind of thing that's going to get done if we're just off kind of cowboying up and trying to do it ourselves. And so we want to be able to work with you and partner with you, get smart together, and then go down this journey together. And then feedback loops. I know that John's really interested in making sure that when we go and do a presentation today, that we get the feedback back from you folks, that informs what it is that we do next. I'll just use yesterday as an example. We had a statewide event where we got some feedback. We're already incorporating that. We're already getting smarter and figuring out what we're going to do differently in the future, while also making sure that we've hit the mark in terms of getting the right takeaways for you folks and people are clear about what it is that they need to go do. Okay, and I think that is it for my presentation. So with that, I think we have some time here to go ahead and do some QA. So, do we have any questions? How about, can we start right here?
You had mentioned earlier that there was a piece of that higher education would use. What piece is that?
Well, that's a good question. So can somebody help me out here with, I know that we had done some work on the, I believe it was on the accounting piece.
Yeah, so Matthew, the answer to that question is higher ed is going to interface with integrations only at this point. So they have data integrations, for example, with finance activities, state budget, that kind of thing.
And then we had another question.
We actually had an online question on how will higher education with our own ERPs interface with One Washington?
So that's a good question as well. So part of my understanding is both that UW and then Wazoo are in the process of doing some work, and then that's going to have to be determined about what is changing on the ground there in Seattle and out in Pullman, and then what will that need to look like as we get ready to go do the actual implementation of these systems. What will need to change? What have they been interfacing with APPERS today? If they're building a new interface that needs to connect to APPERS for the next couple of years, then what will that interface need to change, and what will that need to look like when we have a new system in place, regardless of whatever the system is. I would note that these systems are, the modern systems are, they sometimes have to be changed and the interfaces have to be changed, but they are designed to be fairly nimble in order to be able to connect with each other and connect with other add-on systems and things like that.
Thank you. Community and technical colleges have the similar question. I'm just wondering if you have a point of contact, because we're a long ways from getting done with our conversion to CTC Link. Okay. We want to make sure we're not building something that we turn around and have to break back down.
Yep.
So is there a point of contact already established with the community and technical colleges?
So I don't know about the community technical colleges specifically, but let's definitely chat about what that looks like. And then we have another online question.
We did have another online question. It asks, what does it mean to have 4 years of ERP implementation?
Yeah, so let me just go back to that slide. Can I go back to that slide? Is it turning itself off? I'll just speak to why so many years to go and do that. The purpose is that, like I said, when we first get started in the first part of that box, it's not going to be, yep, go stand up the system. There's a lot of work to figure out, share with the systems integrator, the vendor, about what is it that we know about our systems today. And then getting really smart with them and with you all about what pieces do we start to draw down. What pieces do we, for example, we can't just take HRMS offline and then install the quote-unquote new HR system all at once. That's going to take quite a bit of time to figure out what parts of APPERS, as an example, might need to come down and what other parts of an HRMS replacement need to be brought up all at once. So we don't know exactly what that, those several years, those 4 years are going to look like. It's going to be the type of thing where we're going to start with the stuff that makes sense. We will learn, and it's going to vary by different vendors. So one vendor might have one approach, another vendor might have a different approach. We've got to get smart about what that looks like. As we bring on the different pieces of functionality, that will then start to inform the other pieces that need to come after that, and it's going to take some time until we are fully done in FY26 and fully into maintenance and operations mode. Combined with all the work around data integration and then reporting with business intelligence, that's going to be a really heavy lift. I can't undersell that enough. I can't oversell that enough about like how big of a lift that's going to be over those years to get that right.
Some of you may be curious as to who is involved in those various governance boards. There's a lot of different ones. It's available on One Washington's website. You can actually go click on a link. So if you're wondering, who's my point of contact, or do I know anybody who may be here on the board that listens to and can give me an update, feel free to go to that website and kind of figure out those names that are on that committee.
We got another online question?
Yes, we do. You mentioned a possible future state of being able to input data in one area and have it populated throughout a system. I love this, and it requires some background work. What work is One Washington doing with agencies impacted by One Washington on enterprise data governance, such as standardizing definitions of data fields? And that wasn't a plan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you want to answer that question, Lori? So I will answer at a high level, and then Lori, if you want to add to it. So that is an excellent question. There is a lot of work to do to make sure that when information gets input once, as an example, your employee ID number, then it goes to wherever else it needs to go across the system. To do that and to make sure that we're clear, both with vendors and then internally with ourselves about what that data flow needs to look like, we have staff working on this today with agencies and with data stewards across the state to make sure that we're capturing what's going into that. What are all the different tools that you're using where this data resides, and then what are the inputs and outputs of those so that we're getting clear about when we say, I'll just use a previous life for me, when we say vacancy, what does that mean? When we talk about employee ID number, what does that mean? I can think of a couple of examples where that meant a little different depending on which part of the department you were talking to. Anything else you'd want to add to that, Lori?
Matthew, I think the only thing, you did an excellent job, by the way. The only thing I would add is that in an ERP, we will be mastering data, and so business owners will actually be able to own their data elements and be able to standardize on them.
Yep.
And we are looking at it, and the person that sent the question, send me an email if you're interested in being involved in any kind of data governance.
And do they know how to reach you?
Lori
They've got your
Jones
email address?
at ofm.gov. Thank you.
More online questions. Cool.
Sorry. I noticed that the governance line of effort stops around fiscal year 20 and 21. How will we address governance throughout the readiness, procurement, and implementation phases?
Is the question around the governance piece that ends there in FY19? Yeah. So I should point out that is designed to show where we are setting this up. The governance structure will reside throughout this entire program. We're not getting away from that. There's just so much work, and there's so many different questions that are going to come up. That is a living entity that will be with this program all the way up through implementation.
Thank you. We had one other question. When do you anticipate starting to hire subject matter experts for the different aspects of One Washington procurement, HR payroll, et cetera?
Yep. So we anticipate, our plan right now is that we are working to get ready to go out on the street with job descriptions and with job postings later on this spring. Ideally, we want to get that out there as soon as possible so that we can be doing all the interviewing and all of that, provided that we get the funding in the May and June timeframe so that we can have people start in July. And then obviously we'll be flexible with is that possible given our current staffing loads and all the work that goes into hiring and growing three times in size in a rapid time frame.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the business specifications box in the lower left-hand corner, which looks like it's going on now?
Yes. Yeah, so business specifications, that is alternately called business capabilities, or for those of you that have an IT background, business requirements. That's the piece about have we identified all the different mandatory and nice to have things that we need these different tools to do. And I'll just talk in a little bit detail, and hopefully not bore people, with what we've done on the finance and procurement pieces. So that's where we started last summer, and we've gotten to the point where we've identified what those are, and we've worked with the different business owners to make sure that we've captured the really thousands of different business requirements that are out there. We've now reached out to the business owners both on HR and budget to start the conversation around what are the requirements for those areas. Now, we know that we're not going to be doing a deep dive into those things over the next few months. We don't have the staff to do that. There's other things that we need to be doing around agency readiness and making sure that we've got built all the tools and templates and project plans that are going to help you folks to get ready for the change that you need to do. That's what we're going to be doing for the next few months. But then we firmly believe that as we get into the next fiscal year, we're going to really have to hit the ground running, especially as we get some of these additional, as we get the rest of our staff on board to go and do that and start documenting what those other mandatory and nice-to-have requirements are that will then inform the ERP procurement itself. Does that answer the question? Any other questions? Okay. All right, so with that, I think I will bring this to a close. I just want to thank everybody for their time. Oh, yeah, we've got some more online? Great, great.
One more question online. Is there a plan to have a standard data security for software as a service that is as high or higher than owning the data on state-owned servers?
So not being a technical person, I don't want to put my foot in it. But I will say that these modern tools have extremely high security standards because of the information that they're dealing with. These are systems that run payroll and have access to people's personally identifying information, P3 information, for huge corporations, for very large states. So the security protocols are extremely high. Can I give you what those specifications are? Not a technical person. I can't do that. But I know that that's something that we've been working with the OCIO on, and that's part of why because the security protocols have changed over the last few years, now cloud services are seen as highly secure, and that there's, I don't want to say that give the impression that there's something qualitatively better about having information stored at a particular physical location versus having something up there in the cloud. More online, great.
More online. Okay, so it says earlier you talked about the various approaches agencies are taking to the same problem and the need for standard methods. Will One Washington be looking at variations in legislation that may be driving this and requesting changes from the legislature?
So let me just make sure that I understand the question. Is the question about legislatively mandated things that the legislature has told a state agency, thou shalt do a specific process in a certain way? Is that what the question is about?
No, I think it's more about will One Washington be looking at ways in legislation to standardize on things, since right now we do it many different ways?
I would answer it this way. I don't know that we'd be looking to the legislature to tell us how to run our business in a more centralized way. I think it's more how do we come together as a team and as a group and state agencies that are all trying to serve the citizens. How do we make sure that we're doing things in a way that's consistent and accurate and makes sense for our customers and for our staff that do this work? That's kind of the purpose of the governance structure and the advisory committees, to get some clarity around how do we do these things today, what does make the most sense, what are those exceptions where, no, really, this agency X really does need to do it a little bit differently, and here's why, so that we're doing things in a much more efficient and effective way. Okay, all right. So I just want to, again, thank everybody for your time today. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or the One Washington team. We do monitor our inbox at is it one at? There it is right there, OneWA at ofm.wa.gov. And we check that regularly, daily, hourly, to make sure that we're hearing what's going on. I know that this was primarily an information session where we're kind of like, I'm up here kind of like talking at you. I do want to I want to help you to understand that there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes, both within our program and then with some of the other entities that we've been partnering with. I'll just use DES as an example. They are the business owner for procurement. They already have a couple of folks that are heads down getting ready for this. They got a war room all set up. They've started putting some thought into what is their stakeholdering going to need to look like. They've got 1,400 separate subdivisions out there, political subdivisions, that use their master contracts and other kinds of stuff. They're going to be impacted by this. They have really hit the ground running. There's a lot of work that's happening that we might not see at this level every day, but our goal is to make sure that we're doing that stuff in a smart way and then bringing things back to you folks and sharing information and then hearing back from you to inform some of that other work. So any other feedback as you think about people who might be a good fit for the program, or maybe it's an opportunity for you folks to help influence where the One Washington program is going. Happy to have a conversation about that, and really appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Okay.